Very much for joining us, and a pleasure to get your analysis on that topic. We stay in the United States for our next story, where a US federal judge has overturned President Donald Trump's decision to cut billions in federal funding to Harvard University, ruling that the action violated the college's First Amendment rights. The court ruling also blocks Trump's administration from stopping existing grants and prevents any further funding freeze. This legal decision follows Trump's accusations of anti-Semitism, radical left ideologies, and racial bias at Harvard, which the court has also dismissed, stating that they were not the true basis for implementing funding cuts. Meanwhile, other Ivy League universities, including Columbia, Penn, and Brown, have reached deals with the Trump administration to preserve their funding rather than going to the courts. Following the ruling, the White House has announced that it will appeal the decision very soon. In the meantime, Harvard continues to monitor legal developments as it seeks to protect its federal research grants and institutional autonomy. We're now joined by Mark Sutherland, who's a geopolitical expert, and he joins us live from London to discuss this developing situation coming out of Harvard University. Mark, as always, a pleasure to talk to you. Mark, a federal judge has overturned Donald Trump's attempt to cut Harvard's funding, calling it a violation of the First Amendment. How significant is this in the grand scheme of things when it comes to Donald Trump's attitude in terms of left-leaning academic institutions across the United States, where we have seen a tumultuous relationship, to say the least?
Thomas, good to be with you. Again. Well, there's a long history of this in regard to Harvard, in regard to Columbia, in regard to Ivy League universities in America during the 20s, early into the early 30s. There were quotas that came in, headed up by the president then Lowell, to then, in regard to Harvard, to then restrict the amount of Jewish students that attended university. Columbia, under Nicholas Murray Butler, that was exactly the same. So there are historic precedents. When a University of Columbia then invites the German ambassador Hans Luther in 1933 over to address students and the delights of the Nazi regime after book burning of Jewish books and other people that the Nazi regime thought were undesirables. Why is that relevant? What I'm saying is that history, sometimes we say that history may not repeat itself, but it rhymes. And these things are very important to look at. What we've then seen with all the encampments, what we have then seen with the anti-Jewish student rhetoric, of course, with the anti-Israel and the students then protesting, singing from the river to the sea, etc., in regard to Israel and what has been going on in Gaza, without actually knowing so many facts, if I may say, without sounding too cynical. But this is all part of it. And Trump is turning around and saying, no, I am fed up with this. I am fed up with the ideology that's come in to the universities over many years. If we then go back to the 60s, a lot of those revolutionary students that were on the streets in the 60s in America then took another turn and then said, well, we're going to the institutions and we'll become professors within that institutions, and then we'll push ideology. That cannot be denied in America, also in other countries, including in the UK. It's just that many people were not aware of that at the time, have now very much woken up to this. It is going to be a little bit of a battle within the courts. That's how the American system then works. But the Trump administration, and of course, remember, his daughter converted to the Jewish faith. His daughter is married to Jared Kushner, a Jewish man. So these also have a personal element within that, Thomas.
Wouldn't critics say that personal element is political, Mark? When it comes to putting sanctions and restricting free speech, as some would say, when it comes to the universities, Some people say this is completely political. Of course, the court has dismissed the fact that Donald Trump said there was rampant anti-Semitism and also radical left ideology there. They have dismissed this. What are your thoughts on that, Mark?
Of course, free speech, number one, is extremely important within America, and should actually be very important within the UK. But that's another subject. But the key is this: is that when it turns into violence against Jewish students, when Jewish students are physically being stopped to go into their tutor rooms, when they are then in those tutor rooms, then being invaded by students singing from the river to the sea, etc. Hear me. I'm not saying that people are not allowed to have their opinions. Of course they then are, but unfortunately, when it crosses a line, when it is physical, when it crosses a line, when it is obvious that the ideology, their left-wing thinking is saying, no, we want to get rid of a country, we don't agree with this, but also then undermining the tenets of what America actually then stands for within its constitution. But yes, free speech is extremely important. But it's then how, in certain places, then how that is then said, because advocating any violence is wrong. But as people have found, including myself, when you're trying to then debate people who then have that different opinion, especially in regard to Israel and the whole Gaza conflict, is that very often on the other side, people will not listen. It's a drowning out, and people find facts very hard to deal with. The Jewish students are there paying a heck of a lot of money to attend those Ivy League universities. They have a right to do that. They also have a right to their opinions, and that also needs to be protected. But for many years, we have then seen an ideology that is communist, that is socialist, that is then wanting a revolution, which completely undermines what America then stands for. And we have to remember how America was then formed from persecution. But Thomas, sorry.
That's all right, Mark. Thank you very much for joining us. You are staying with us to discuss further United States updates. US President Donald Trump has